Hello and welcome to Let's Learn Wikia, where I take Wikipedia articles and turn them into audiobooks in an attempt to help both you, the viewers, and myself learn new things. Down in the comments below, tell me what you would like to see me do next. The comment with the most likes will be my next article. Today we will be talking about Chesty Puller. Lewis Burwell Chesty Puller, June 26, 1898 through October 11, 1971. Was a United States Marine Corps officer, beginning his career fighting guerrillas in Haiti and Nicaragua as part of the Banana Wars. He later served with distinction in World War II and the Korean War as a senior officer. By the time of his retirement in 1955, he had reached the rank of lieutenant general. Puller is the most decorated Marine in American history. He was awarded 5 Navy Crosses and 1 Distinguished Service Cross. With 6 crosses, Puller is second behind Eddie Rickenbacker for citations of the nation's second highest military award for valor. Puller retired from the Marine Corps in 1955 after 37 years of service. He lived in Virginia and died in 1971 at age 73. Early life. Puller was born in West Point, Virginia to Matthew and Martha Puller. Puller was of English ancestry. His ancestors who came to America emigrated to the colony of Virginia from Bedfordshire, England in 1621. His father was a grocer who died when Puller was 10 years old. Puller grew up listening to old veteran tales of the Civil War and idolizing Thomas Stonewall Jackson. He wanted to enlist in the United States Army to fight in the border war with Mexico in 1916, but he was too young and could not get parental consent from his mother. The following year, Puller attended the Virginia Military Institute, but he left in August 1918 as World War I was still ongoing, saying that he wanted to go where the guns are. Inspired by the 5th Marines at Bellawood, he enlisted in the United States Marine Corps as a private and attended boot camp at the Marine Corps Recruit Depot, Parris Island, South Carolina. Although he never saw action in that war, the Marine Corps was expanding, and soon after graduating, he attended its non-commissioned officer school and officer candidate school at Quantico, Virginia. Graduating from OCS on June 16, 1919, Puller was appointed second lieutenant in the reserves, but the reduction in force from 73,000 to 1,100 officers and 27,400 men following the war led to his being put on inactive status 10 days later and given the rank of corporal. War years, United States occupation of Haiti. Corporal Puller received orders to serve in the Gendarmerie de Haiti as a lieutenant, seeing action in Haiti. While the United States was working under a treaty with Haiti, he participated in over 40 engagements during the ensuing 5 years against the Caco rebels and attempted to regain his commission as an officer twice. In 1922, he served as an adjutant to Major Alexander Vandergrift, a future commandant of the Marine Corps. Supply run. Puller received orders to deliver supplies to Mirabilis and Las Cahoebas. These 2 small towns were located in a region where there was a significant presence of Caco guerrillas under the command of Benedict Batcherville, who was a high-ranking insurgent leader. Puller's supply party consisted of 25 mounted Haitian gendarmeries along with the pack animals. Puller kept his force moving rapidly to avoid risking an ambush or night attack by the Caco. Later on, the small force of gendarmerie, led by Puller, ran into an equally surprised column of about 100 Cacos coming from the opposite direction around a bend in the road. Puller ordered a charge and spurred his horse forward to attack the Cacos. The gendarmeries charged him and scattered the Cacos, who used guerrilla tactics and therefore seldom stood their ground if attacked by a significant force. The Cacos fired a handful of shots at the onrushing American-led gendarmeries and then dispersed to make pursuit more difficult. With the burden of the pack mules, Puller could not pursue the evasive Cacos. After the clash ended, one dead Caco bandit was found. The skirmish was Puller's first engagement in the occupation and showed his adeptness at aggressive action and effective leadership from the front. Puller and his force of gendarmeries reached Mirabilis and delivered the supplies needed by the town. The next day, Puller made a 34-hour round trip to Las Cojobas to deliver the final supplies and then returned to Port-au-Prince, completing his supply run. Ambushing the Cacos. Puller was assigned a new duty to begin offensive operation against the Cacos. Puller inherited a force of 100 gendarmeries, who were supported unofficially by about the same number of female camp followers. Puller's assigned chief assistant was acting second lieutenant Augustin B. Brunot, a Haitian who was fluent in English. Other pro-American Haitians added to Puller's force were newly commissioned lieutenants Loete and Brunot and a Haitian private named Jean-Louis Sermontot, who Puller recruited with the promise of promotion after seeing him return from a successful patrol with the severed heads of 2 Cacos bandits. Brunot and Leite advised Puller on how to combat the Cacos insurgents. They advised him that daylight patrols had little chance of encountering the Cacos, as they hid during the day, only emerging from hiding to ambush government patrols if they had superior numbers. Chance encounters, such as Puller's supply run, were rare because the Cacos knew the terrain and had good intelligence of constabulary activities. They advised him that the Cacos encamped at night and that night patrols would have a better chance of surprising them. When Puller and his unit, following this advice, patrolled along a ridgetop trail one night, he observed campfires and heard drums nearby. Puller, with Leite and some gendarmeries, went to scout while Brunot remained with the rest of the gendarmeries. The noise turned out to be a celebration at a Cacos guerrilla encampment. After returning, Puller came up with a plan to ambush the Cacos at dawn. Puller placed the main body of men in a line facing the bandit camp and sent the smaller crews with 3 Lewis machine guns to flank them in a position where they covered the enemy rear, setting up an L-shaped ambush. After Puller's force of gendarmeries got into position, Puller executed the ambush. As Puller had predicted, when the main body of men opened fire at first light, surprised Cacos bandits fled from the source of immediate danger into the field of fire of the machine guns, where all 17 were killed. Dozens of machetes and a large flock of gamecocks were found. Puller and his gendarmes celebrated their victory and feasted on abandoned supplies while using the gamecocks for cockfighting. Puller later participated in more patrols as he gained experience and learned the peculiarities of small wars. Further operations against the Cacos, October to November of 1919. Puller would conduct more offensive operations to suppress the Cacos. On October 28, 1919, Puller went out on a patrol with Brunot and a mixed force of 15 American Marines and gendarmes. They would stay out 10 days, at which time another group would relieve them. The unit, using night movements, made contact on October 31st with a small band, killing 2 of the enemy and capturing 4 rifles, several machetes, and some swords. On November 1st, they arrested 3 suspected bandits. Infiltrating and raiding a Cacos camp, November 4th, 1919. On the afternoon of November 4th, 1919, Puller and his men entered a small village of grass shacks 10 miles west of Mirabilis. A priest told Brunet that a high-ranking Cacos insurgent leader named Dominique Georges had a camp about 15 miles away. He and his men decided to take the opportunity to kill or capture Dominique Georges. Despite heavy rain, Puller took a small patrol of Marines and gendarmes out immediately. Puller, Brunot, and Private Sermontot Jean-Louis scouted out ahead of the small column during the night when they came upon the remains of a bonfire, indicating a bandit guard post. A Caucasus sentry armed with a rifle challenged Puller's group. The sentry could not see them clearly as it was very dark and his bonfire had been put out by the rain. Brunet replied in his Haitian accent, "Caucos," at which the guard let them through. Puller, Brunet, and Jean Louis were able to infiltrate the Caucos camp and came upon a clearing with many huts and lintos. Puller and Jean Louis took firing positions on the ground after Puller sent Brunet to gather the rest of the patrol to assault the camp. Puller aimed his rifle at a man he later believed was Georges, but waited for the main attack instead of firing. A Kako challenged the two prone figures so that Puller had to shoot the Kako, starting the battle. The Marines and Gendarmes rushed forward, but the estimated 200 Kakos scattered, with Puller and Jean Louis firing as fast as they could at the fleeing figures. After the government forces had possession of the camp, they found one dead Kako. Puller's patrol took 27 rifles, swords, and machetes, and several dozen gamecocks. Among the booty was George's personal rifle, identified by his initials in the stock. Puller and his patrol spent the night at the camp and then withdrew safely to their base at Mirabilis. Patrol and Raid, November 9th, 1919. On November 9th, Puller and Brunet led a party of about 33 Gendarmes. Just before dawn, they found a camp and attacked it. This time, Puller and his fellow Gendarmes killed 10 Kakos and captured 2 rifles. After the raid of the Kakos camp, they safely withdrew to Mirabilis by a circuitous route and fell into garrison routine for a few days. Further patrol operations. After the successful assassination of Charlemagne Peralty by Herman H. Hannigan in a raid, Benoit Batcherville became the next leader of the Kakos. Puller and Brunet each took a party of the company out on a patrol. Brunet spotted a Kako force that turned out to be Batcherville's. But before Brunet could get his force into position for an attack, the Kakos broke camp and melted away. Puller had better luck with 2 Kakos killed and 16 captured. End of the fighting in Haiti. The Kakos rebellion collapsed altogether when a Marine patrol killed Batcherville on May 19th, 1920. A month later, the last significant Kako leader surrendered. More patrols by the Gendarmes and American Marines in the following year killed a further 85 Kakos. And later on, in September 1920, Herman H. Hannigan penetrated a Kako camp in the disguise, arresting 5 chiefs while killing another. By June 1921, a government military commander declared the country to be completely tranquil. Return to the United States. Puller returned stateside and was finally recommissioned as a second lieutenant on March 6, 1924. After completing assignments at the Marine Corps Barracks in Norfolk, Virginia, the Basic School in Quantico, Virginia, and with the 10th Marine Artillery Regiment in Quantico, Virginia, he was assigned to the Marine Corps Barracks at Pearl Harbor in July 1926 and in San Diego, California in 1928. United States occupation of Nicaragua. In December 1928, Puller was assigned to the Nicaraguan National Guard detachment, where he was awarded his first Navy Cross for his actions from February 16th to August 19th, 1930, where he led 5 successful engagements against superior numbers of armed bandit forces. He returned stateside in July 1931 and completed the year-long company officers course at Fort Benning, Georgia. Thereafter, returning to Nicaragua from September 20 to October 1st, 1932, and was awarded a second Navy Cross. Puller led American Marines and Nicaraguan National Guardsmen into battle against Sandinista rebels in the last major engagement of the Sandino Rebellion near Alsace on December 26, 1932. Patrolling, June 4th through the 6th of 1930. After Puller inherited command of Nicaraguan Guardia Nacional, called Company M, He was prepared to conduct operations against the Sandinista rebels and immediately departed on a patrol. Puller moved eastward for a 5-day sweep, but soon received orders to head northeast. The patrol moved day by day and camped each night in a village. In the afternoon of June 4th, the company was at San Antonio cooking a steer in preparation for a trek into the uninhabited area around Mount Calinde. After hearing some gunshots to the north, Puller sent 13 men of the Guardia to investigate 1,000 yards beyond the town. The Guardia encountered 6 rebels who may have been Sandinistas, and a firefight occurred. They killed 1 rebel while the other 5 fled. The rebel bandit was armed with a Springfield rifle and a Colt revolver. On June 6th, the patrol moved towards the village of Los Critos and encountered an equally surprised force of Sandinistas who were on top of a brush-covered hill that sloped about 175 yards down to the trail. The Sandinistas opened fire on the patrol, and the patrol returned fire. Without hesitation, Puller dashed up the rise while yelling for his men to charge. Puller's men joined in the attack and fired their weapons while charging the enemy position. Puller and his Guardia were able to avoid being hit by small arms fire and crude improvised grenades thrown by the rebels. The rebels were routed and fled. Puller and his men realized they stumbled onto an insurgent camp. 7 dead rebel bodies were found, and Puller's force suffered no casualties. Puller's patrol found 2 rifles, 1 pistol, and 10 machetes. They also found rosters and papers in the rebel camp, which revealed that 2 of the 7 dead rebels were leaders of the group. After that, Puller's company returned to Jinotega. Further operations, June 12th through July 12th of 1930. Puller departed on a new patrol on June 12th. Puller's patrol searched fruitlessly and found nothing. Puller and his men arrived back at their base on June 20th. On June 24th, Puller, William Ironman Lee, and their men joined forces with another government patrol of 30 men under the command of Lieutenant M. K. Chenoweth. Together, the combined American-Nicaraguan forces left Jinotega. At Santa Fe, Puller picked up an additional 15 Garudas. After patrolling, Puller's men had encountered lone bandits on 2 occasions and killed them both. Puller's large group operated for nearly 2 more weeks, often split into patrols, with one following the other at a distance. The reinforced unit finally returned to base on July 12th. Attempted ambush against the rebels, further pursuit, and raiding a rebel camp, November 6th to the 27th of 1930. Puller and his Company M went out on patrol again on November 6, 1930. Puller, Lee, and 21 men left Jinotega to search for the enemy. The patrol picked up a trail of about 30 bandits who were pillaging small ranches near Santa Isabel. Puller's patrol caught sight of the enemy at 9 a.m. on November 19th, pursuing them for 3 miles and wounding at least one of them. Puller's patrol decided to surprise the bandits. The patrol set up an ambush, hiding themselves amongst a trail, when a manager of a local finca spotted them and walked up to them to provide them with information on a rebel band. With the ambush compromised by the finca manager, the patrol moved on. Puller's patrol reported into Carrico Finca on November 20th for supplies and pack animals, then left on the same day to check out a report of a rebel concentration near Mount Gilipino. Puller and his patrol struggled through heavy rains, muddy trails, and flooded rivers. On the morning of November 25th, the patrol came across a bandit trail. The Guardia under Puller followed this trail, and at 10:30 a.m., the point sighted about 10 rebels amongst some fallen trees. Puller's men opened fire, and the enemy fled. Further along the trail, the pursuers came upon the rebel camp, which had 4 buildings with log barricades in front and a 100-foot cliff in the rear. There were at least 40 or 50 or so rebels who fought briefly. The rebels threw their belongings and wounded 3 men into the ravine and then clambered down on ropes and ladders, which they pulled down after themselves. By the time some of the Guardia worked their way down into the draw, the enemy had disappeared. Puller's patrol found 2 dead bandits and some supplies. Puller was certain that the 3 wounded bandits who had gone over the cliff had died. Puller's force captured documents which show that one of the previous operations, on August 19th, 1930, wounded a minor chief of the rebels. After raiding this rebel camp, Puller's unit withdrew and returned to Jinotega on November 27th after 3 weeks of hard patrolling. Patrol and raid against the rebels, September 20th through 26th, 1932. Puller discovered a trail which seemed to be used by the rebels. Puller, along with Lee, gathered 40 Guardia Nacional members for a raid-like patrol against the rebels. Puller, Lee, and the Guardia left on September 20th. After traveling a long distance, the patrol came by the northwest from the bank of the Ayabal River. On September 26, Puller's patrol was ambushed by the rebels. Lee used a Lewis machine gun to keep the enemy pinned down while the Guardia Nacional worked their way up the slope opposite the rebel ambush party. When they gained the crest, they were able to fire directly into the rebel emplacements. Puller's men penetrated the center of a rebel encampment, killing at least 16 rebels. Of Puller's force, 2 men were killed and 4 wounded. In order to obtain medical care for the wounded, Puller immediately withdrew back to Jinotega. During Puller's withdrawal, his patrol was ambushed twice, but suffered no more casualties and fought off the ambushers. Puller's Guardia killed at least 8 more rebels. Puller's force arrived back at Jinotega on September 30th after their raid on the rebel encampment. Final battle in Nicaragua, December 26, 1932. There were rumors that the Sandinista rebels were planning an attack on a ceremony that was going to commemorate the completion of the Leon L. Sauce Railway. An expedition of 8 American Marines and 64 Nicaraguan National Guardsmen, led by Puller, were sent to El Sauce on December 26, 1932. As Puller's force of American Marines and Nicaraguan National Guardsmen were traveling some distance in their train to their destination, they were ambushed by the rebels from both sides of the tracks. Puller and William A. Lee, quickly with their troops, immediately engaged the rebel ambushers. After a firefight of 1 hour and 10 minutes, the Marines and Guardia Nacional were able to drive off the rebels. Puller's victorious force had suffered 3 dead and 3 wounded for the Guardia Nacional. The rebels suffered 31 killed and lost 63 live horses to capture by Puller's force. The ceremony went on as planned 2 days later while Puller and Lee got promoted. Aftermath. After his service in Nicaragua, Puller was assigned to the Marine Detachment at the American Legion in Beijing, China, commanding a unit of China Marines. He then went on to serve aboard USS Augusta, a cruiser in the Asiatic Fleet, which was commanded by then-Captain Chester W. Nimitz. Puller returned to the States in June 1936 as an instructor at the basic school in Philadelphia, where he trained Ben Robertshaw, Pappy Boyington, and Lew Walt. In May 1939, he returned to the Augusta as commander of the onboard Marine Detachment, and then back to China, disembarking in Shanghai in May 1940 to serve as the executive officer and commanding officer of the 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, until August 1941. Major Puller returned to the U.S. on August 28, 1941. After a short leave, he was given command of 1st Battalion, 7th Marines of the 1st Marine Division stationed at New River, North Carolina, later Camp Lejeune. 2. Early in the Pacific Theater, the 7th Marines formed the nucleus of the newly created 3rd Marine Brigade and arrived to defend American Samoa on May 8, 1942. Later, they were redeployed from the brigade, and on September 4th, 1942, they left American Samoa and rejoined the 1st Marine Division at Guadalcanal on September 18th, 1942. Soon after arriving on Guadalcanal, Lieutenant Colonel Puller led his battalion in a fierce action along the Manatuco, in which Puller's quick thinking saved 3 of his companies from annihilation. In the action, these companies were surrounded and cut off by a larger Japanese force. Puller ran to the shore, signaled a U.S. Navy destroyer, the USS Monson, DD-436, and then directed the destroyer to provide fire support while landing craft rescued his Marines from their precarious position. U.S. Coast Guard signalman First Class Douglas Albert Monroe, officer in charge of the group of landing craft, was killed while providing covering fire from his landing craft for the Marines as they evacuated the beach, and was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor for the action. To date, the only Coast Guardsman to receive the decoration. Puller, for his actions, was awarded the Bronze Star Medal with Combat Via Device. Later on Guadalcanal, Puller was awarded his 3rd Navy Cross in what was later known as the Battle for Henderson Field. Puller commanded 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, 1/7, one of 2 American infantry units, defending the airfield against a regiment-strength Japanese force. The 3rd Battalion of the U.S. Army's 164th Infantry Regiment, 3/164, fought alongside the Marines. In a firefight on the night of October 24th through 25th, 1942, lasting about 3 hours, 1/7th and 3/164th sustained 70 casualties. The Japanese force suffered over 1,400 killed in action, and the Americans held the airfield. He nominated 2 of his men, one being Sergeant John Basilone, for Medals of Honor. Puller was wounded himself on November 8th, 1942, during the Battle of Coley Point, suffering arm and leg wounds during a Japanese attack on his command post. His injuries were serious, requiring surgery, and command of 1/7th was temporarily assigned to Major John E. Weber of 3/7. Puller was released from the hospital and resumed command of his battalion on November 18th. Puller was then made executive officer of the 7th Marine Regiment. While serving in this capacity at the Battle of Cape Gloucester, Puller was awarded his 4th Navy Cross for overall performance of duty between September 26, 1943, and January 19, 1944. During this time, when the battalion commanders of 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines, and later 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines, were under heavy machine gun and mortar fire, he expertly reorganized the battalion and led the successful attack against the heavily fortified Japanese defensive positions. He was promoted to colonel effective February 1st, 1944, and by the end of the month had been named commander of the 1st Marine Regiment. In the summer of 1944, Puller's younger brother, Samuel D. Puller, the executive officer of the 4th Marine Regiment, would be killed by an enemy sniper on Guam. Battle of Pililoo. In September and October 1944, Puller led the 1st Marine Regiment into the protracted battle on Pililoo, one of the bloodiest battles in Marine Corps history, and received his first of 2 Legion of Merit awards. The 1st Marines under Puller's command lost 1,749 killed and wounded out of approximately 3,000 men. But these losses did not stop Puller from ordering frontal assaults against the well-entrenched enemy. He would come under significant criticism for not asking for reinforcements when both he and his regiment were at the point of exhaustion. During this time period, Puller was described as being almost monosyllabic and showing little tactical deviation from the frontal assaults on entrenched high ground positions. When the corps commander, General Roy Geiger, visited Puller's command post, he found Puller shirtless, with a corncob pipe in his mouth and a badly swollen leg that had been originally injured on Guadalcanal, but swollen to twice its size. Colonel William Coleman, a member of the corps staff, had the impression that Puller was completely exhausted both mentally and physically. He was unable to give a very clear picture of what his situation was. When Geiger asked him if he needed reinforcements, and Puller stated that he was doing all right with what he had. This was a crucial moment when Puller could have asked for the help that he so badly needed. But, like the division commander, General Rippertus, Puller could not bring himself to ask for help from U.S. Army units held in reserve. General Robert Cushman believed that while Puller was a great combat leader, his aggressive nature limited his understanding of combat to launching constant attacks, regardless of the circumstances. Historian John McManus, in a highly critical article, Fatal Pride at Pillaloo, wrote, Captain Everett Pope, one of Puller's company commanders, was anything but a fan of Puller, whom he thought of as a mindless butcher. I had no use for Puller, said Pope, who was awarded the Medal of Honor for his actions at Pillaloo. He didn't know what was going on. The adulation paid to him these days sickens me. General Cushman, who would serve as commandant of the Marine Corps, believed that Puller was a great combat leader who, nonetheless, could not understand anything except constant attacks, regardless of the circumstances. He was beyond his element in commanding anything larger than a company, maybe a battalion, where he could keep his hands on everything and be right in the middle of it. McManus concluded that Puller represented aggressiveness, valor, and inspirational leadership, all ingredients that make the Marine Corps great. But he also demonstrated the tendency of Marine Corps officers to overly rely on these strengths to the exclusion of all else. He repeated, mindless frontal attacks were the American version of bonsai, almost as costly and every boot as fruitless. As a result of both the strain on Puller and his regiment, Geiger ordered Repartists to pull the all but annihilated 1st Marine Regiment out of the line as they were no longer combat effective. Within days, the other 2 regiments would also be withdrawn from the island and replaced by 3 Army regiments who would also eventually be pulled out. Return to the U.S. Puller returned to the United States in November 1944, was named Executive Officer of the Infantry Training Regiment at Camp Lejeune, and 2 weeks later, Commanding Officer. After the war, he was made Director of the 8th Reserve District at New Orleans, and later commanded the Marine Barracks at Pearl Harbor. Korean War. At the outbreak of the Korean War, Puller was once again assigned as commander of the 1st Marine Regiment. He participated at the landing of Incheon on September 15, 1950, and was awarded the Silver Star Medal. For leadership from September 15th through November 2nd, he was awarded his 2nd Legion of Merit. He was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross from the U.S. Army for heroism and action from November 29th to December 4th, and his 5th Navy Cross for heroism during December 5th through 10th, 1950, at the Battle of the Chosin Reservoir. It was during that battle he said the famous line, "We've been looking for the enemy for some time now. We finally found him. We're surrounded." That simplifies things. In January 1951, Puller was promoted to Brigadier General and was assigned duty as Assistant Division Commander, ADC, of the 1st Marine Division. On February 24th, however, his immediate superior, Major General Oliver Prince Smith, was hastily transferred to command 9 Corps when its Army commander, Major General Bryant Moore, died. Smith's transfer left Puller temporary in command of the 1st Marine Division until sometime in March. He completed his tour of duty as an assistant commander and left for the United States on May 20th, 1951. He took command of the 3rd Marine Division at Camp Pendleton in California until January 1952, and then was assistant troop commander of the division until June 1952. He then took over a troop training unit Pacific at Coronado, California. In September 1953, he was promoted to Major General. Post-Korean War life. In July 1954, Puller took command of the 2nd Marine Division at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina until February 1955, when he became Deputy Camp Commander. He suffered a stroke and was retired by the Marine Corps on November 1st, 1955, with a promotion to Lieutenant General. His nickname was related to the way his barrel chest stood out due to his aggressive stance, with legends claiming that a steel plate had been inserted by surgeons to treat a battle wound. In a handwritten addition to a typed November 22, 1954 letter to Major Frank C. Shepard, Puller wrote, "I agree with you 100%. I had done little soldiering previous to Guadalcanal and been called a lot of names. But why Chesty? Especially the steel part. Family and personal life. Puller's son, Lewis Burwell Puller Jr., generally known as Lewis Puller, served as a Marine First Lieutenant in the Vietnam War. While serving with 2nd Battalion 1st Marines, 2/1, Lewis Jr. was severely wounded by a mine explosion, losing both legs and parts of his hands. Lieutenant General Puller broke down sobbing at seeing his son for the first time in the hospital. Lewis Jr. won a 1992 Pulitzer Prize for his autobiography, Fortunate Son: The Healing of a Vietnam Vet. He committed suicide in 1994. Puller was father-in-law to Colonel William H. Dabney, a Virginia Military Institute graduate, who was the commanding officer, then captain, of 2 heavily reinforced rifle companies of the 3rd Battalion 26 Marines, 3/26, from January 21st to April 14th, 1968, in Vietnam. During the entire period, Dabney's force stubbornly defended Hill 881 South, a regional outpost vital to the defense of the Khe Sanh combat base during the 7-day siege at the Battle of Khe Sanh. Dabney was recommended for the Navy Cross for his actions on Hill 881 South, but his battalion executive officer's helicopter carrying the recommendation papers crashed, and the paper was lost. It was not until April 15th, 2005 that Colonel Dabney received the Navy Cross during an award ceremony at Virginia Military Institute. Puller was a distant cousin to U.S. Army General George S. Patton. He was an Episcopalian and parishioner of Christ Church Parish in Saluda and is buried in the historic cemetery there next to his wife, Virginia Montague Evans. Decorations and awards. Puller received the second highest U.S. military award 6 times, one of only 2 persons so honored: 5 Navy Crosses and 1 U.S. Army Distinguished Service Cross. He was the second of 2 U.S. servicemen, after U.S. Navy submarine commander Roy Mountain Davenport, to ever receive 5 Navy Crosses. Puller's military awards include: first row, Navy Cross with 4 gold stars; Distinguished Service Cross, Army, Silver Star, Army. Second row, Legion of Merit with Combat V device and 1 gold star; Bronze Star Medal with Combat V device; Air Medal with 2 gold stars, Purple Heart. Third row, Presidential Unit Citation with 4 bronze stars; Marine Corps Good Conduct Medal with 1 bronze star; Marine Corps Expeditionary Medal with 1 bronze star; World War I Victory Medal with West Indies class. Fourth row, Haitian Campaign Medal, 2nd Nicaraguan Campaign Medal, China Service Medal, American Defense Service Medal with 1 bronze star. Fifth row, American Campaign Medal, Asian Pacific Campaign Medal with 4 bronze stars, World War II Victory Medal, National Defense Service Medal. Sixth row, Korean Service Medal with 1 silver star, Haitian Médaille Militaire, Nicaraguan Presidential Medal of Merit with Diploma, Gold Star, Nicaraguan Cross of Valor with Diploma. Seventh row, Korean Unit of Military Merit, Yuzuji Cordon Medal, Republic of China Order of the Cloud and Banner with Special Cravat, Republic of Korea Presidential Unit Citation, United Nations Service Medal for Korea. Looks like this if you zoom in on all the awards, top to bottom, left to right. First Navy Cross Citation. For distinguished service in the line of his profession while commanding a Nicaraguan National Guard patrol, First Lieutenant Lewis B. Puller, United States Marine Corps, successfully led his forces into 5 successful engagements against superior numbers of armed bandit forces. namely at La Vergen on February 16, 1930, Los Cedros on June 6, 1930, Montecatol on July 22, 1930, Guapinol on July 25, 1930, and Malacate on August 19, 1930, with the result that the bandits were in each engagement completely routed with losses of 9 killed and many wounded. By his intelligence and forceful leadership, without thought of his own personal safety, by great physical exertion, and suffering many hardships, Lieutenant Puller surmounted all obstacles and dealt 5 successful and severe blows against organized banditry in the Republic of Nicaragua. Second Navy Cross Citation. First Lieutenant Lewis B. Puller, United States Marine Corps, performed exceptionally meritorious service and a duty of great responsibility while in command of a Guardia patrol from 20th September to 1st of October 1932. Lieutenant Puller, in his command of 40 Guardia and Gunny Sergeant William A. Lee, serving as a first lieutenant in the Guardia, penetrated the isolated mountains bandit territory for a distance of from 80 to 100 miles north of Ginutiga, his nearest base. This patrol was ambushed on September 22, 1932, at a point northeast of Mount Kilimbi by an insurgent force of 150 in a well-prepared position armed with not less than 7 automatic weapons and various classes of small arms and well supplied with ammunition. Early in the combat, Gunnery Sergeant Lee, the second in command, was seriously wounded and reported as dead. The Guardia immediately behind Lieutenant Puller in the point was killed by the first burst of fire. Lieutenant Puller, with great courage, coolness, and display of military judgment, so directed the fire and movement of his men that the enemy were driven first from the high ground on the right of his position, and then by a flanking movement forced from the high ground to the left, and finally were scattered in confusion with a loss of 10 killed and many wounded by the persistent and well-directed attack of the patrol. The numerous casualties suffered by the enemy and the Guardia losses of 2 killed and 4 wounded are indicative of the severity of the enemy resistance. The signal victory in jungle country with no lines of communication and 100 miles from any supporting force was largely due to the indomitable courage and persistence of the patrol commander. Returning with the wounded to Ginutiga, the patrol was ambushed twice by superior forces on September 30th. On both of the occasions, the enemy was dispersed with severe losses. Third Navy Cross Citation. For extraordinary heroism as commanding officer of the 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, 1st Marine Division, during the action against enemy Japanese forces on Guadalcanal, Solomon Islands, on the night of October 24th to 25th, 1942. While Lieutenant Colonel Puller's battalion was holding a mile-long front in a heavy downpour of rain, a Japanese force, superior in number, launched a vigorous assault against that position of the line which passed through a dense jungle. Courageously withstanding the enemy's desperate and determined attacks, Lieutenant Colonel Puller not only held his battalion to its position until reinforcements arrived 3 hours later, but also effectively commanded the augmented force until late in the afternoon of the next day. By his tireless devotion to duty and cool judgment under fire, he prevented a hostile penetration of our lines and was largely responsible for the successful defense of the sector assigned to his troops. Fourth Navy Cross Citation. For extraordinary heroism as executive officer of the 7th Marines, 1st Marine Division, serving with the 6th United States Army in combat against Japanese forces at Cape Gloucester, New Britain, from December 26, 1943 to January 19, 1944, assigned temporary command of the 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines, from January 4th to 9th. Lieutenant Colonel Puller quickly reorganized and advanced his unit, effecting the seizure of the objective without delay. Assuming additional duty in command of the 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines from January 7th to 8th, after the commanding officer and executive officer had been wounded, Lieutenant Colonel Puller unhesitatingly exposed himself to rifle, machine gun, and mortar fire from strongly entrenched Japanese positions to move from company to company in his front lines, reorganizing and maintaining a critical position along a fire-swept ridge. His forceful leadership and gallant fighting spirit under the most hazardous conditions were contributing factors in the defeat of the enemy during this campaign and in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service. 5th Navy Cross Citation. For extraordinary heroism as commanding officer of the 1st Marine Division, reinforced, in action against aggressor forces in the vicinity of Kotori, Korea, from December 5th to 10th, 1950, fighting continuously in sub-zero weather against a vastly outnumbering hostile force, Colonel Puller drove off repeated and fanatical enemy attacks upon his regimental defense sector and supply points. Although the area was frequently covered by grazing machine gun fire and intense artillery and mortar fire, he coolly moved along his troops to ensure their correct tactical employment, reinforced the lines as the situation demanded, and successfully defended the perimeter, keeping the main supply routes open for the movement of the division. During the attack from Kotori to Hungnam, he expertly utilized his regiment as the division rearguard, repelling 2 fierce enemy assaults which severely threatened the security of the unit, and personally supervised the care and prompt evacuation of all casualties. By his unflagging determination, he served to inspire his men to heroic efforts in defense of their positions and assured them safety of much valuable equipment which would have otherwise been lost to the enemy. His skilled leadership, superb courage, and valiant devotion to duty in the face of overwhelming odds reflect the highest credit upon Colonel Puller in the United States Navy service. Distinguished Service Cross Citation. The President of the United States of America, under the provisions of the Act of Congress approved July 9, 1918, takes pleasure in presenting the Distinguished Service Cross to Colonel Lewis B. Chesty Puller, United States Marine Corps, for extraordinary heroism in connection with military operations against an armed enemy of the United Nations while serving as commanding officer, 1st Marine Division, reinforced, in action against enemy aggressor forces in the vicinity of the Chosin Reservoir, Korea, during the period November 29th to December 4th, 1950. Colonel Puller's actions contributed materially to the breakthrough of the 1st Marine Regiment in the Chosin Reservoir area and are in keeping with the highest traditions of the military service. Silver Star Citation. The President of the United States of America, authorized by Act of Congress, July 9, 1918, takes pleasure in presenting the Silver Star Army Award to Colonel Lewis B. Chesty Puller, United States Marine Corps, for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity while commanding the 1st Marine Division reinforced, in action against enemy aggressor forces during the amphibious landing resulting in the capture of Incheon, Korea, on September 15, 1950, in the Incheon-Seoul operation. His actions contributed materially to the success of this operation and were in keeping with the highest traditions of the military service. Namesakes and honors. In addition to his military awards, Puller has received numerous honors due to his Marine Corps service. On October 26, 2017, a groundbreaking ceremony was held for Puller Veterans Care Center located in Vint Hill, Fauquier County, Virginia. The facility was named in honor of Puller and his wife. The frigate, Lewis B. Puller, FFG 23, was named after him. The headquarters building for the 2nd Fleet Anti-Terrorism Security Team on Yorktown Naval Weapons Station in Yorktown, Virginia, is named Puller Hall in his honor. Route 33 in Middlesex County, Virginia, is named General Puller Highway. It is the county in which Puller is buried. On November 10, 2005, the United States Postal Service issued its Distinguished Marine stamps in which Puller was honored. The current Marine Corps mascot has been named Chesty Pullerton, e.g. Chesty the 13th. He is always a purebred English bulldog. In 2012, Military Sealift Command announced that a mobile landing platform will be named after Puller. USNS Lewis B. Puller. Death and legacy. Following his retirement, Puller lived in Saluda, Virginia, where he was later buried after his death on October 11, 1971, at Christ Church Cemetery next to his wife. Puller remains a well-known figure in U.S. Marine Corps folklore, with tales of his experiences being constantly recounted among U.S. Marines. A common practice in U.S. Marine Corps boot camp is to end one's day with the decoration, "Good night, Chesty, wherever you are." Another common encouragement is Chesty Puller, never quit. In U.S. Marine Corps recruit training and OCS cadences, range chant, "It was good for Chesty Puller, and it's good enough for me," as well as "Tell Chesty Puller I did my best." Chesty is symbolic of the esprit de corps of the Marines. Also, the recruits saying Chesty Puller was a good Marine and a good Marine was he. U.S. Marines, while doing pull-ups, will tell each other to do one for Chesty. Puller insisted upon good equipment and discipline. Once he came upon a second lieutenant who had ordered an enlisted man to salute him 100 times for missing a salute. Puller told the lieutenant, "You were absolutely correct in making you salute you 100 times, Lieutenant. But you know that an officer must return every salute that he receives. Now return them all, and I will keep count." While on duty in Hawaii and inspecting the armory, Puller fined himself $100 for accidentally discharging a .45 caliber pistol indoors, although the charge for his men was only $20. A section of Virginia Highway 33 running from West Point to the Gloucester County community of Glens is named Lewis B. Puller Memorial Highway. Puller was also a lifelong Freemason. He was made a Master Mason at Huron Lodge number 57 in Virginia, where he was a member until his death. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Let's Learn Wikia. In the comments below, tell me what you would like to hear me do next, and see you next time.